I invite you to take your Bible and turn to Deuteronomy chapter 8, the passage that Pastor Manny just read for us. Speaking of Pastor Manny, Trace and I will be going next weekend, and he'll be having the privilege to exhort you from God's wonderful Word next Sunday. I also want to remind you that right after the service today, we'll be heading out to the carport, and there we'll be cheering on our Awana kids. They'll be recognized for their achievements over the past Awana year, and so we'll have the privilege just to show them our support. And then there's also a treat for you because I understand that today is National Ice Cream Day. Deuteronomy chapter 8. I want to say, too, officially that it's a privilege for us to be together again, and little by little, more and more, we're seeing our brothers and sisters under the direction of the Lord, the leadership of the Lord, with wisdom, to be able to gather here in this place in person, and we want to welcome those of you in that situation, in that category, back. And for those of you who are joining us online, thank you for that, because we are launching this. I think last Sunday was the first time, and today we've gone live at 10 o'clock also. And so you can see this service on our YouTube channel. Deuteronomy chapter 8. I hope these words will be an encouragement to you. So many of you know that we have a barn down there, an upper barn and a lower barn. The lower barn is situated like a shop. It has some things in there for storage, but it's basically a shop. So recently I was walking through the lower barn, and I heard a familiar sound. Tap, 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 tap. And I sort of thought that I knew what it was. And as I walked farther into the barn, my suspicions were confirmed. It was a bird. A bird was banging into the window, and banging again into the window, and then banging into another window, and then banging into another window. I assumed that it was trying to get out of the barn. Interestingly enough, about 20 feet away, there was an overhead door completely open. And at the other end of the barn, there was another overhead door completely opened. But this bird was banging its head against the window, banging itself against the window. So I got compassion on this bird. I wanted to set it free. I just watched it for a little bit, and it appeared that it was not succeeding in its attempts. And so I got my blower. And I wasn't going to handle it. I was going to get my blower. And I put my battery into this blower, and then I fired it up, pulled the trigger and fired it up. I thought that would be enough to scare the bird, to get it off of its perch, the windowsill that it was clinging to. It didn't work. So I approached the bird with the blower at full force. I got about this far away from the bird. I got the blower aimed right at the bird. It's a little thing. And the bird held on to that perch, that windowsill. But I just kept it there. I was thinking about what was going through the bird's brain. What was he thinking? Here's somebody who's come to hurt me. Here's somebody who has come to want to kill me. Here's somebody who is coming to want to destroy me. But that wasn't what was going through my brain. In my brain, I wanted to help it. I kept the blower there. Finally, the bird let go. It tumbled back. And then it got its bearing, and then it started flying. The next thing I knew, 30 seconds later, it was soaring out the other side of the barn, out the open door, into freedom. And again, I got to myself reflecting. I wasn't expecting any thanks from the bird. I'm not expecting that it's going to do me any favors. But I just wonder, did the bird go home to its bird family and say, I got myself out of this jam? The reality is this. We all have an advantage. We're all in a similar advantage. It's also a disadvantage, and I'll mention that in a moment. The advantage that we all have, brothers and sisters, is that we all see horizontally. We all see horizontally. That's the human way. That's our nature. That's all we can do is see horizontally. We are sensorial. We derive we get input from the senses. And then we make calculations and draw conclusions from the senses. But the beautiful thing of the Christian life, the beautiful thing of the Christian worldview is that God gives us another way of looking. That doesn't suspend the first way of looking or the former way of looking, because we're still going to gather information and data and impressions based upon the horizon, the horizontal perspective, our view of things. But the beautiful thing about God and His wonderful Word is that He gives us another view. He gives us His view, His perspective. And that's what's really ultimately, enduringly valuable. That is really what has this sense of an enduring quality to the Christian life. That while we are experiencing things on the horizontal plane, it is helpful for us to realize that there's another dimension altogether. That there's another vantage point and another perspective. It's God's perspective. We are that bird. We bang our heads and bang our heads and bang our heads when there's freedom right 20 feet away. And we bang our heads and bang our heads thinking that we're making progress. We're making no progress. And then when we finally find a way to freedom, we say, because of my wisdom, my strength, my erudition, my smarts, my experience. And all we need to do is just recognize, wait a minute, there's another perspective here. There's another angle we need to consider. That God comes along and He says, don't get that idea. Don't get that idea that you did this because of your strength and your prowess and your ability. I was here to help you all along. What I want you to see, brothers and sisters, is that, and I'm going to warn you right now, it's going to sound like a bumper sticker, and it's going to sound so pithy and so overused, but because of what the foundation we just laid in the last 7 minutes, it's so true. What might be temporarily look like pain for us may very well end up for our enduring gain. When all we can see is some big blower coming at us and some bigger thing holding that blower coming at us, trying to torture us, trying to torment us, trying to inflict pain upon us, may very well be the answer to our freedom. It may very well lead to our greatest gain. Again, I don't know because I didn't let the scenario play out. But I assume that if the bird had just kept banging its head for what, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, how long could a little bird bang its head? If I had just gone on my way and maybe closed this door and closed that door and closed off, not knowing that the bird was there, then I could assume that the next morning I could come and see a dead bird sitting there in the workshop. But what he may have seen from the horizontal of only pain and inconvenience and discomfort, from the second perspective, the more valuable, enduring perspective, was that I'm not here to hurt you at all. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to curtail your freedom. I'm here to help you fly and enjoy the freedom that you were meant to enjoy. And this is an interesting perspective for us, and it's always valuable for us to understand this. Because now when we come to Deuteronomy chapter 8, it's Moses speaking to the children of Israel who have wandered 40 years, 4 decades in the wilderness. And they're now at the end. So Deuteronomy, as you know, takes place over a space of about a month. A month, that's all it is, because it's just preparation. Deutero, second, namas, law, the second giving of the law. He's already given the law, the first giving of the law, the Decalogue, Exodus chapter 20. He's going to now reiterate the law. This is the second giving of the law. It's not a new thing, it's the reiteration of the former thing. And so in Deuteronomy, it's just a matter of, let's recap, let's refresh, because you're going to go into a land And I want to prepare you to go into that land to enjoy it fully, because this is what you were meant to enjoy, because God's got it prepared for you, because He promised it to you. In the meantime, I need to remind you of a few things. I need you to look back. I need you to look back because here's what I need you to understand, and the message is just as relevant for us today. The reason why you can trust, beloved, that your immediate pain and discomfort, whatever it is right now, will amount to your eternal gain is because God has a history with you, and you have a history with God. Because you remember a time, in fact, you remember many times in your past where God was there for you. You remember where God provided for you. You remember where God answered your prayers. You remember where God dried your tears. You remember where God sort of took that Gordian knot in your life that you couldn't unravel and no one else could unravel, and He gave you the solution, maybe on your knees in prayer, maybe in a praise song, maybe just talking to a friend, but He gave you an answer, and He was there for you to comfort you. When you wanted to walk away and throw it all away, He was there to remind you, I'm going to be here for you, and I will never leave you, and I will never forsake you. You have a history with God. But you could also trust this because of this. That everything God asks you to give up, He will always make up to you. And then some. Everything that God asks you to give up, He will always make up. And then some. A mom and a little one are at the supermarket. The mom has found something that she wants. She comes to the cash register. The lady says it's so much money. The mom goes through her purse. Sure enough, she's got her change purse there. She's got her wallet there, but there's no money in it. She doesn't know why. She's got a little one. The little one has a wallet. The little one has $20 in that wallet. The mom says, "Can I borrow $20 from you?" Now, there's going to be something going through that little one's mind. Number one, this is my $20 bill. I don't know if I can part with this. I know Mom said that I'll pay you back as soon as we get home, but I don't know if I can be apart from this $20 bill for more than an hour. That might go through her mind. Maybe there's a second thing that goes through her mind. A second thing that goes through her mind is, will my mom remember to pay me back? I mean, will she remember she's telling me right here at the register that she needs this money because she won't be able to purchase this item. So she asked me for it, and I have the money. I can give it to her, but what if she doesn't pay me back? That could go through her mind. Well, let's say she surrenders that $20 and gives it to her mother. As soon as they get home, they walk through the door. The mom says to the little one, "All right, sweetheart, come on over. I'm gonna make good on my promise." She opens her purse and she gives out the $20 to her little one. And then she says, "Because you were so willing to give me that money and to surrender it so quickly, here's $5 in addition." Now, that's not a bad return. That's not a bad deal. That wasn't part of the promise. The part of the promise was the promise was, I'm going to pay you back. It wasn't, I'm going to pay you back with interest, or I'm going to pay you back and then some. Now, the next time there's an encounter, and the mom asks for a similar request, what do you think might help additionally inform that little one? Hey, last time I made out on this. I gave up this 20, but I got more than that in return. Brothers and sisters, here's the thing that we have to remember. That when God asks you to give up anything, He will never, ever be stingy in the return. Ever. Yes, I know we can throw around the verses. I want you to know that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that shall be revealed. That's glory. That's perspective. That's to remind us that everything that God calls us to endure today, everything that God tells us to experience today or to give up for Him today, He will return to us and then some. So when God calls Abraham a childless man, out of a faraway place and says, I want to make of you a great nation. Now, don't you think that God was going to make up for what Abraham had to give up, and then some? Now, I recognize there's a mystery in the book of Job. It's a big mystery, and it doesn't add up mathematically. I get it. But when you read chapter 42, which is the last chapter of Job, compared to chapter 1, that's the whole story. That God made up to Job all that he took away from Job, and then some. I know you can't make up for a child, and I know that. So that's why there's a big mystery here. But when you see it in the big picture, in the big flow of it, you have to see this, that when you read 42, the writer is going to be very clear here that Job far surpassed in wealth and in health and in every other area that he had from chapter 1, from what he began with. In Matthew 19, Peter, the spokesman for the disciples, comes to Jesus and says, Lord, we have given up everything to follow you. What now is there for us? And Jesus answers it. This is built into us, I think. And maybe it's selfish. Maybe it's just a sense of, I want some confirmation, I guess, that all that I'm asked to give up is going to be recompensed. But God says, you will never be able to outgive him. And whatever he calls you to give up, he will always make up. And then some. Whatever inconveniences you are asked to endure today, and there are many, whatever things that are just a big nuisance to you, which maybe in light of eternity and in light of the guy in another country are only a nuisance. They're not a big deal. They're just a micro deal. But they're a nuisance nonetheless. God says there's something far greater that is coming your way. Not because we believe or imbibe the health and prosperity model. That's not because of it. But because God, on his timing, on his timetable, and on his terms, will always, always, always make up for what he's asked you to give up. And then some. Now let's bear it out, okay? Look at Deuteronomy chapter 8 with me. The whole commandment that I command you today you shall be careful to do. That, notice all the purpose statements. And we know purpose clauses because of the word that. All right? Not every that is the purpose clause, but purpose clauses begin typically with that word that. For this reason, for this purpose, you could read it. That you may live and multiply and go in and possess the land that the Lord swore to give to your fathers. And you shall remember the whole way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness. What's he saying? God has a history with you. God has a history with you. Now let me reflect on the history. That he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart. Wow, verse 2. That he might humble you. That you might recognize that you're not the king of your life. And that the world doesn't revolve around you. And that there is another opinion to be considered. And that there is room for growth. And that pride can still be dealt with. And self-sufficiency can still be dealt with. And it's my way and no other way can still be dealt with. And God's saying to humble you and to see what was to testing you to know what was in your heart. Whether you would keep his commandments or not. And he humbled you. And, notice the phrase, let you hunger. Beloved, our understanding of God in our theology, because our theology is derived from the plain reading of God's wonderful word, that God has his hand in everything that happens. God has his hand in everything that happens. I know some of you are incredulous. That's fine. But God has his hand in everything that happens. And you have to consider the alternative if you come up with a negative answer to that. What do you mean he has a and then you're going to start listing things in your mind. I know, and they're all bad things. You mean God had his hand in that and that and that and that? That has to be. It has to be. Because God is not caught by surprise. And God is not playing catch up with his information. He's not last to know of a thing. He let you hunger. He knew what you were going to experience. He let it all happen. But why? He tells us why. And he fed you with manna. What is it? That's basically the best we can do with the translation. What is it? And it's echoed for us here. Which you did not know, nor did your fathers know. In other words, you've never experienced this before. You didn't know what this was. What's this thing falling from the sky? What's this thing, just a dew on the ground? You go to gather it up every morning, 6 days a week. On one day, you're not to gather anything. What is this manna? I don't know. We never saw this before. We've never been here before. We've not done this before. There's no manual on manna. What do we do with this stuff? Well, God is going to tell them what to do. But God was going to reveal his provision through this manna. He was going to feed them. This is going to be something that they would never forget. It would be part of their story so that they could tell their children and their children's children. You've got to hear. You've got to hear the story, little ones. Let's gather around Poppy's lap, and I want to tell you the story of how God came through when we needed him most. He didn't have to feed us, but he fed us. What did he feed you with, Poppy? He fed you with manna. What's manna? That's exactly what it is. You know the who's on first thing? That's what manna is. Like, what is it? That's manna. What is it? Who knows what it is? It's just there, and you know what? It sustained us. How long? 40 years. What's this about? Every day you had to go out and eat it. God was going to make sure that he was going to provide it every day. What you did not know, neither did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. So when you go to Matthew 4:4 and Luke 4:4, you're going to see Jesus in the temptation quoting Deuteronomy chapter 8, that passage. What's this mean? Man should not live by bread alone. Here's why. Because the bread came as a result of the Word of God. We are not sustained by the provision. We're sustained by the power behind the provision. That it's the God who can make everything happen and anything happen to accomplish his purposes for his glory, for our good. So that man does not subsist on bread alone, but by every word, the power behind the provision. Every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Going on. Your clothing did not wear out on you, and your foot did not swell these 40 years. Know then in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, the Lord your God disciplines you. He just wants to correct you. He just wants to disciple you. And you can obviously see the reason why I use the word. To train you. Which really gives us a great insight as far as parenting is concerned. It's not primarily punitive or punishment. You're not a police officer laying down the law and then execute and then just making sure that law is obeyed. There's a part of that, but that has to fit into a greater picture of discipling and disciplining that one to want to obey the Lord and want to listen to his voice and to want to have a heart malleable to his will. That's the ultimate purpose for parenting. And that's what he says here. So you shall keep the commandments, verse 6, of the Lord your God by walking in his ways and by fearing him. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land. A land, notice, of brooks, of water, fountains and springs flowing out in the valleys and hills. A land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates. A land of olive trees and honey. A land in which you will eat bread without scarcity, in which you will lack nothing. A land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills you can dig copper. And you shall eat and be full, and you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. Are you seeing now, from an inductive way, how the first 15 minutes of our talk this morning was to get to this very thing in the text. Do you see the comparison that's made for us? There, you have nothing to eat. You have everything to eat over here. You have nothing to drink, and God is going to provide it through a rock, miraculously. And you have springs over here in abundance. That's the point. What they were asked to give up, God was going to make up, and then some. And it would blow their minds. It would blow their minds. This is the perspective, beloved, that I would love as your friend, I would love as your exhorter and pastor to be able to say, just remember the vertical perspective. Just remember the other perspective. I know you're seeing this and you're hurt and you're betrayed and you're discouraged and despondent and ready to give up and quit. I get it, because I'm hearing that you're just responding from a sensorial, horizontal perspective. But just consider, and if I can be a voice for God and a force for good in your life, just consider God's perspective. Just consider a far perspective, not a near perspective only, a far perspective. That what God is asking you to endure, He is going to make up for. And then some. On His time frame, in His terms. But just keep that long look. Keep that long look. And beloved, if not in our lifetime, eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor has entered into the mind of man what He has prepared for them who love us. Now that's Old Testament, but Paul brings it into the New Testament, into the Corinthians, and he says, but God has revealed them to us. This mystery that has been, that another generation couldn't know about, we have entered into. And we have the promises of eternal life and hope and joy. At your right hand, in your presence there is what? Fullness of joy. At your right hand there are pleasures forevermore. God will see to that. One of the words that I wish, and I told you this so many times, I graduated with, and I'm going to add to it now. I wish I graduated from seminary with a magic wand, but I also wish I graduated from seminary with magic words. A wand that I could just wave over your head and say, let all the effects of your betrayal be gone. Let all the effects of your disappointment be gone. Let all the effects of your rejection be gone. Let all the effects of your damaged self-image be gone. And then have it be done overnight. But I wish I had words, magic words too. That I could just say the right thing and have everything be healed, everything be okay in your life. But God let you go hungry for a reason. And He let you experience what you're experiencing right now for a reason. So that these lessons that we're learning now in the wilderness, we're not wasting our wandering. Because we will look back. And we will want to reflect on the fact that we drew closer to Him, not away from Him. We became more joyous, not more bitter. We became more outward focused, not more self-focused. We became more eternally minded and less temporally minded. There's got to be some gain from what we've been asked to give up. And God says it so. Take care lest you forget the Lord your God, verse 11. And then basically He's going to reiterate that to the very end. And let me mention it now in verse 19. If you forget the Lord your God and go after other gods and serve them and worship them, I solemnly warn you today that you shall surely perish. Like the nations that the Lord makes to perish before you, so you shall perish. So shall you perish because you would not obey the voice of the Lord your God. What's the takeaway? The takeaway here would be to spend some time every day moving closer to Him. Because you may not see it, but when you walk away from Him, you're not only walking away from Him, you're walking towards something or someone else. You don't have the luxury, nor do I, of just saying, I'm going to walk away from Him. you will, by that very choice, be walking towards something else. This is the warning that Moses issues. Don't forget the Lord. Remember the Lord. These are the two key words in the chapter. Don't forget and remember. Because when you forget, and then you say, you know what, I don't need God as much as I did. Because in the wilderness, when you're wandering, you don't know where you're going to get your food. You're dependent. You're close. But then, when you got a refrigerator full and a cupboard full and you don't need God as much, you don't stay as close to Him. And if you don't stay as close to Him, then you're inclined to forget Him. And if you're inclined to forget Him, then you're inclined to think that maybe I can handle this on my own. And then you start taking steps away from God, and guess what happens? You start taking steps toward another God, lowercase g. Because you cannot serve two masters. And that's where the warning comes in at the very end. It's not that God in His wrath is going to come and destroy you, but the fact is, you've committed idolatry and you've walked away from Him. Just like Jeremiah says, my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living water, and they have hewn out for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. We have walked away from the God who can satisfy us truly, deeply, longingly. And we've gone after the thing that has no enduring satisfaction. And so we have to do it. And chase after this elusiveness. You put change in your pocket that has a hole in it, the prophet's going to say. You gain nothing by that. Beloved, what might right now be an immediate pain might result in actually your eternal and enduring gain. You are learning something because God is at work and He's at work in you. But just so long as we don't waste the wandering moments, because there's no guarantee that just because you go through it, you're going to learn from it. That's why James says, my brethren, count it all joy when you encounter trials of different kinds, shapes, and sizes, knowing this, that the trying of your faith works patience, and he's going to say, now it's time for your cooperation in the process. You didn't have anything to say about the trials that came into your life, but you have everything to say about how you're going to respond to them. And let patience have her perfect work, so that you might be perfect and entire, lacking nothing. And if any man lacks wisdom, James 1:5, the wisdom specifically in the context of learning how to deal with this Gordian knot, this unsolvable puzzle, this thing that I just don't know where to go, where to turn, let him ask of God, who gives to all men liberally and does not upbraid. You see, we stay close to Him. And the more question marks we have, and the more uncertainties we have, is the reason to stay as close to Him as possible. And God has a purpose in these wilderness wanderings. And may we, by the grace of God, just see, maybe not see the purpose, but know that He has the purpose and then cling to Him. That in His time, He will reveal that purpose. And to always know that I'm dealing with a generous God because we have a history. He's never let me down. He's always been there for me. He has been my rock and my shield and my fortress. And when Jesus says, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you, you can count on that every day. Some of you are so in love with Him for reasons that you at first despised. Because you were brought to a situation that you did not know what to do about. And you sought Him out, and you stayed close to Him, and you found in Him to be your ultimate reward. That what He asked you to give up, He actually made up in Himself. That you have come to find Him as a friend and as a brother born for adversity. And then when everybody else has fled, he's been there. So Paul would say in his goodbye memoirs, 2 Timothy, in my hour of trial, no man stood with me, but the Lord stood with me and strengthened me. And so many of you have a similar testimony. And I trust that as we work through this together, we'll have a similar testimony. That as we look back on these days, we will be able to say, I drew near to the Lord. I became a more humbled person, a more patient person, a more other-centered person. I recognized it wasn't all about me and my preferences and my opinions and all these other things. And these are the things that He taught me. And I don't know if I would have learned them any other way. Beloved, know this too, that Jesus came and died on the cross for our sins, and that makes no human sense. But from a vertical perspective, it makes every sense. Because you were lost, we were lost, and without any help and hope in this world. But it makes no sense for a perfect and sinless man to die on a cross for sins that he did not commit. But in God's view, it makes complete sense because He did for you what you could not do for yourself. And you are here today, and I had the joy and glory of knowing that we come to preach the gospel to ourselves because we need the gospel every day of our lives. And it's our privilege and joy to have bragged on God and hopefully by the grace of God to build up the people of God. And if there's someone here today without God, that you will be brought to Him today through the preaching of His word and through the drawing of His Spirit. You encourage me. God bless you all. Let's pray.